After my son's funeral, I inherited his old SUV, while his wife seized millions of dollars and kicked me out of the house. When I got into the vehicle, an automated voice message suddenly played. A familiar voice came through the speakers. "If Dad is hearing this, it means I'm dead. Or people think I'm dead. Don't trust Vanessa. Follow the GPS coordinates." Then the GPS screen suddenly turned on by itself, leading me to a place she never wanted me to see. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a glass of water, a few snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every opportunity to do the right thing. They simply chose wrong. Leave a comment with the number 1 so we can begin the story, and hit like because I believe you're going to enjoy this one. My name is Robert Mitchell, 68 years old. I spent my entire life working as a mechanic. I understand how gears work. I know when a machine is broken, but I failed to realize that my family was falling apart from the inside. 6 days ago, I buried Nathan. My only son. He was only 35 years old, an engineering genius. He died in a horrific traffic accident. His body was burned black, unrecognizable. Today, we sat in the lawyer's office. The air was icy cold. The smell of expensive leather mixed with the luxurious perfume of Vanessa Price, my daughter-in-law. Just 6 days after her husband's death, she showed up with her nails painted bright red. Not a single tear, not a trace of emotion on her carefully made-up face. The lawyer began reading the will. His voice was flat and monotonous like a money-counting machine. Vanessa got everything. The $1,200,000 mansion in the hills, the investment funds, Nathan's technology patents. Total assets worth more than $5,000. I sat there stunned. My calloused hands, covered with old grease stains, pressed tightly against my thighs. My palms were as rough as sandpaper. They stood in stark contrast to Vanessa's smooth hands. Finally, the lawyer looked at me. He announced my share, a 2018 Ford Explorer. It had more than 100,000 miles on it. Old and scratched, Vanessa smiled, a smirk that never reached her cold eyes. She stood up. Her high heels clicked against the wooden floor like nails being driven into a coffin. She dropped the car keys onto the table in front of me. The metal clattered harshly. Vanessa leaned down, close to my ear. The overpowering smell of her perfume made me nauseous. She whispered, "It's old, just like you, Dad. Keep it as a souvenir." Her contempt hit me square in the face. Ice cold. The pain inside me did not erupt into words. It compressed, heavy, like a block of wet concrete hardening inside my chest. I said nothing. I picked up the keys. I stood up and walked out to the parking lot. The gray SUV stood there beneath the November drizzle in Cleveland. Cold and alone, it sat in a dark corner of the parking lot, exactly the way Vanessa wanted to get rid of me. I opened the door and got into the vehicle. The smell of old leather and familiar machine grease filled my nose. This was the car Nathan had used when he first started his career. I inserted the key. The engine roared once, then gently vibrated. Before I could press the accelerator, the vehicle's electrical system suddenly began flickering. A crackling sound came from the speakers. The GPS screen in the center suddenly began flashing repeatedly, even though I had never touched it. The pitch-black screen came alive. A line of bright red text appeared, along with a strange set of coordinates. It was an address in Parma, an old abandoned industrial district. An automated voice message was triggered. Nathan's voice. A chill ran down my spine. My hand gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. When Nathan's voice abruptly cut off, the inside of the car returned to a terrifying silence. Only the sound of the November rain tapping against the metal roof remained. I sat there frozen. My trembling hands clutched the steering wheel tightly. My old heart pounded relentlessly, like a piston with a broken valve. I stared hard at the GPS screen. The bright red text containing the Parma coordinates was still glowing. It was not a system error. Nathan was an exceptional software engineer. He never allowed mistakes in his lines of code. He had installed this program beforehand, specifically for me. The gray Cleveland cold seeped through the windows. It slipped through my coat and pierced straight into my bones. Everything around me blurred. The grief of losing my son now turned into a raging fever. I stepped on the gas. The SUV shot out of the parking lot. The tires ground hard against the soaking wet pavement. I did not return to my house. I drove straight to Parma. The Parma Industrial District was located on the outskirts of the city. It was filled with old gray brick warehouses. This place had once been a bustling industrial heart, but now all that remained were the corpses of abandoned buildings beneath the rain. Dense fog covered everything. Flickering streetlights cast a murky yellow glow. I slowed down. The GPS guided the vehicle to a stop in front of an unnumbered gray brick warehouse. Its metal roll-up door was completely rusted. I turned off the engine. The rain was still falling heavily. The smell of rotting cedar wood and damp metal filled my nose. I stepped out of the vehicle. My old legs trembled as I walked through muddy puddles. The freezing wind blew through the gaps between the rows of warehouses, creating eerie, howling sounds like the sighs of the dead. I approached the warehouse door. Beside the traditional mechanical lock was a new electronic keypad. Its backlight was green. I stood staring at the keypad. My calloused hand hesitantly reached up. Nathan always used special numbers as passwords. I entered my birthday, July 14th. A beep sounded. The green light came on. The electronic lock opened. The iron chain inside moved with a scraping sound. I gathered my strength and pulled the metal door upward. Dust and the heavy smell of motor oil rushed out. The warehouse was pitch black. I felt along the wall and flipped the light switch. The fluorescent lights buzzed ominously. The white light flickered several times before fully illuminating the room. The inside of the warehouse was not abandoned at all. It was astonishingly clean. Right in the center of the warehouse was a large vehicle completely covered by a black tarp. I moved closer. My trembling hand grabbed the edge of the tarp. I yanked it down. A jet-black Ford Explorer appeared. Its paint gleamed without a single scratch. The sharp headlights reflected the fluorescent light. It was the very Explorer Nathan had driven on the night of the accident. I froze. My mind spun. If this vehicle was sitting here completely intact, then whose vehicle had burned to ashes at the bottom of the ravine? Whose disfigured body had the police found in the accident? I stood rooted to the spot in the freezing warehouse. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The gleaming black Ford Explorer stood there like a ghost. I stepped closer. My rough hand touched the hood. The metal was cold. Not a single dent. No trace of fire. This was my son's real vehicle. The vehicle the police said had plunged into the ravine and burned to ashes 6 days earlier was just a fake. A perfect setup, my heart pounded. The mind of an old mechanic began connecting the gears of the truth. Nathan was alive, or at least he had known what was going to happen. I walked around the vehicle. The door was unlocked. I opened it and stepped into the cabin. The smell of premium leather and Nathan's familiar car fragrance filled my lungs. On the passenger seat was a small metal box. Its surface was stained with grease, exactly like my son's way of working. I opened the box. Inside was a tablet and a smart key. The tablet screen automatically lit up. It recognized my face. The words, "Hello, Dad," appeared on the screen. I tapped the only video file in the center. Nathan appeared. His face was gaunt. Dark circles surrounded his eyes from lack of sleep. His work clothes were covered in dirt. He was sitting in a dark room. Nathan's voice came through the tablet speakers, low and filled with exhaustion. "Dad, if you're watching this video, my plan has entered phase 2. I'm sorry I had to keep this from you. I had to do it to protect my own life." I held my breath. My son's words echoed through the silent warehouse. 3 months ago, I discovered that the braking system on my vehicle had been tampered with. Someone wanted me dead. I began secretly controlling the surveillance equipment in the house remotely. Nathan stopped. He took a deep breath. His face showed unbearable pain. I discovered that Vanessa never loved me. She's been secretly seeing Dr. Gregory Walsh. They don't just want to put me in a coffin. They want the $4,800,000 life insurance payout. The policy pays double if I die in an accident. My chest throbbed with pain, as if someone had slammed a wrench into my rib cage. Anger began burning through my blood. I switched the vehicle. I staged the fake accident using another vehicle of the same model year and a body from Walsh's private hospital. I had to disappear so they would reveal themselves. The video paused for a few seconds. Nathan's face became more serious than ever. "But that's not all, Dad. Turn on this tablet and connect it to the external hard drive that comes with it. Vanessa wasn't just targeting me. She started this plan a long time ago." I hurriedly plugged the small hard drive into the tablet. A list of audio and image files appeared. The first folder bore my wife's name, Margaret. My hands began trembling violently. My head spun. Margaret had died 4 years earlier from sudden heart failure. I tapped the first audio recording of Margaret. The weak voice of my late wife came through, making my entire body go numb. Margaret's voice echoed through the empty warehouse. It was a whisper, weak, like a dry leaf trembling in the wind. "Robert, I feel tired again today. My chest feels tight." Vanessa's Earl Grey tea tasted very strange. A little bitter, but she said it was an herbal remedy that would help me sleep better. The crackling sound lingered, then went completely silent. I slumped in the driver's seat of the Ford Explorer. My calloused hand dug tightly into my thigh. The pain compressed into a violent spasm in my stomach. Margaret, my wife, the woman who had been by my side for 40 years. She had passed away on a winter night 4 years ago. The doctor concluded that it was heart failure. I had blamed myself for the past 4 years. I thought I had failed to take good care of her. But now, every gear of the truth was beginning to fall into place. A horrifying truth. The tablet screen switched to Nathan's next video. His voice hardened, filled with anguish and fury. "Dad, I know what you're thinking. That night I found this recording in Mom's old drawer. I started to suspect something. I secretly tested the tea residue left inside the container at the old house." Nathan held up a yellowed test result in front of the camera. "Mom didn't die from natural heart failure. She was poisoned. Small doses of arsenic were mixed into her tea every day. For 8 months. The person who made Mom's tea every afternoon was Vanessa." My chest felt like it exploded. My blood boiled. I took a deep breath. The smell of grease and motor oil no longer comforted me. Instead, there was a bitter taste in my throat. 4 years. I had lived under the same roof as a murderer. I had treated her as my daughter-in-law. I had allowed her to take care of my family. Nathan continued. His face on the screen became resolute. "Vanessa didn't enter our family because of me. She was after the family's assets and the insurance money. But she doesn't know that I already know everything." Nathan paused. He stared directly into the camera as if he were looking straight into my eyes. "I staged this fake accident so Vanessa and Gregory Walsh would be confident that they'd won. They'll start moving the assets and collecting the insurance money. That's when they'll be most vulnerable." My son pulled out a small black memory card. All the evidence of their withdrawals. Manipulation of medical records and poisoning plot is stored in Vanessa's study at the mansion. She hides it behind the painting on the wall where her personal safe is. Nathan lowered his voice. His breathing quickened. "I can't appear. The police and Walsh's men are searching for this vehicle. Dad, you're the only person who can retrieve that memory card. But Vanessa has replaced the entire security system at the mansion." I gripped the tablet tightly. No tears fell across my aged face. Only the wrinkles relaxed. My eyes shifted from grief to the coldness of steel. I am a mechanic. I have spent my entire life repairing broken machines. And now, the machine that was my family had been destroyed by a beast. I would dismantle every part of her with my own hands. Nathan's video ended with a line of text appearing on the screen. "Contact Patricia, the former housekeeper. She still has the spare key to the internal passageway." I stepped out of the Ford Explorer. I pressed the tablet tightly against my chest beneath my coat. The rain in Parma was falling harder and harder. The cold no longer seemed to make me tremble. Inside me, only a black flame remained burning fiercely. I climbed into the old SUV, the vehicle Vanessa had given me with contempt. I inserted the key. The engine roared. The GPS screen flickered again. A new location automatically appeared on the map. It was Nathan's $1,200,000 mansion. the place where Vanessa was celebrating her victory with her lover. I turned the vehicle around. Tonight, I would return to that house, not as a poor old man who had been thrown out onto the street, but as a man coming to collect a debt. But just as the vehicle rolled out through the warehouse gate, a powerful beam of headlights from a truck across the road suddenly shone directly into my eyes. The headlights shone directly through the windshield. I narrowed my eyes. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The truck passed by. Its tires rolled through a puddle, sending water spraying everywhere. There was no ambush, just a nighttime delivery truck. I took a deep breath. My heartbeat slowed. I turned the vehicle toward the mansion district on the hill. The Cleveland rain poured down. The windshield wipers ran at full speed. I parked the old SUV on a dark street corner, 200 meters from the mansion. The 3-story house was brightly lit. The faint scent of cedar wood lingered in the damp air. This place had once been Nathan's pride. Now it looked like a gilded trap. I went around to the back door. Darkness swallowed my aging figure. Just as Nathan had instructed, Patricia was waiting at the internal passageway. She had been a housekeeper with my family for 10 years. Under the security light, fear flickered across Patricia's face. Patricia pressed the mechanical key into my hand. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Everyone is asleep, but Vanessa just called Dr. Walsh over. They're in the living room downstairs." I nodded. I slipped through the side door, walking quietly across the thick carpet. The house was strangely silent except for the soft, classical music coming from the living room. I moved along the dark hallway toward the staircase leading to the second-floor study. As I passed the corner, I stopped. Vanessa's voice rang out crystal clear. "The insurance paperwork is finished. The $4,800,000 will be deposited into the account next week." Gregory Walsh's deep laughter followed. "The body in the vehicle completely matches Nathan's dental records. Old Robert is senile. He doesn't suspect a thing." I clenched my fist. The veins bulged across my calloused hand. I took a deep breath to suppress my rage. The wet concrete in my chest seemed to harden. I continued up the stairs. Vanessa's study was pitch black. The overpowering scent of expensive perfume filled the room. I approached the large painting hanging on the wall. Just as Nathan had said, behind it was a drywall partition. I gently slipped in the screwdriver I had brought with me. The painting shifted to one side. A recessed mirror appeared. I gently turned the edge of the mirror. The hidden door opened into a narrow gap. Inside the concealed compartment was more than just the memory card. It contained small unlabeled glass vials. Beside them was Margaret's black leather notebook. My wife's. I picked up the notebook. My hands trembled violently beneath the dim light from my phone. Margaret's final journal entry had been written 3 days before she died. The handwriting was crooked. "I know Vanessa is putting something in my tea. My vision gets blurrier every day. But I can't tell Robert. She threatened to hurt Nathan if I spoke up." My eyes turned bloodshot. Rage burned through every cell in my body. Margaret had silently endured the poison to protect her son, and I had been completely useless. I slipped the journal and the memory card into my coat pocket. Suddenly, the steady sound of footsteps clicked across the wooden floor outside the hallway. The high heels stopped directly in front of the study door. The door handle began to turn slowly. The door handle turned halfway. I held my breath. Darkness enveloped me. I stepped back. As quickly as a mechanic accustomed to handling emergencies, I slipped behind the thick double-layered velvet curtain beside the window. The office door opened. Light from the hallway cast a long strip across the floor. Vanessa walked in. She was wearing a black silk nightgown. In her hand was a glass of red wine. The overpowering scent of perfume filled the air. She approached the desk. The sharp clicks of her heels echoed across the wooden floor. She did not notice the recessed mirror. She simply picked up a folder from the desk. She opened it, skimmed through it, then smiled. A cold smile. Not a trace of grief from a woman who had just lost her husband. "Are you done yet, Gregory?" Vanessa said into the phone. "When you're finished, come upstairs. I want to celebrate." She turned and walked out. The office door closed. The sound of her heels faded down the stairs. I stepped out from behind the curtain. My heart pounded inside my chest. Cold sweat ran down my spine. I took out Margaret's notebook and the memory card to check them again. They were still safe inside my coat pocket. This journal was invaluable evidence. It proved that Margaret's death 4 years ago had not been natural. For 4 years I had lived with regret. I thought I had been a terrible husband. But no. My wife had been murdered by the very person we had treated like one of our own children. The pain turned into overwhelming rage. Like a steel bar tempered in red-hot fire and then plunged into cold water, it became harder and sharper. I could not leave the same way I had entered. Walsh and Vanessa were downstairs now. I approached the office window. I gently opened the glass pane. The November cold struck me directly in the face. The rain was still falling without stopping. Outside the window was the brick roof of the first-floor porch. Beside it ran a copper drain pipe. I climbed over the windowsill. My calloused hands gripped the brick ledge tightly. At 68, my body had begun to wear down. My joints creaked under the weight of my body. But rage gave me strength. I slid down the drain pipe. My feet touched the soaking wet ground. I quickly crossed the dark garden. I slipped through the side gate and reached the main road. The old SUV was still parked quietly beneath the trees. I climbed into the vehicle. I locked the doors tightly. I took out the tablet. I inserted the memory card I had just retrieved into the device. A series of data files appeared on the screen. There were records of secret bank transactions, newly established life insurance policies, and even recordings of phone calls between Vanessa and Gregory Walsh. Among them was an audio file named Robert. I tapped the file. Gregory Walsh's voice came through crystal clear. "Has that old man started getting suspicious yet?" Vanessa's voice replied, filled with contempt. "No, he's just a senile old mechanic. But to be safe, we'll take care of him next week. Send him after his wife and son." A chill ran down my spine. They wanted to wipe out my entire family. I turned off the screen. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I would not run away. I would prepare a trap. I inserted the key. The engine roared. I drove toward Stanley Morrison's auto repair shop, my old friend. But after I had gone only 2 blocks, the GPS screen in the vehicle lit up again. A red emergency warning appeared, along with the rapid sound of an alarm. My vehicle was being remotely tracked. The GPS screen flashed with bright red text. The navigation system warned of unauthorized access. Vanessa and her lover had activated the tracking chip in the vehicle. They wanted to know where this senile old man was going in the middle of a rainy night. I smiled, the cold smile of an old mechanic. She thought she had the upper hand, but she did not know that Nathan had modified this SUV beforehand. I pressed a hidden button beneath the armrest. The GPS screen immediately switched to simulated location mode. It continued transmitting a signal showing that the vehicle was heading toward my old house, while I was actually turning toward Stanley Morrison's auto repair shop. Stanley's shop was on the outskirts of town. The shop lights were still on. The strong smell of grease and metal filled the air. Stanley was 65 years old. His hair was completely gray. His hands were covered in black grease. He was my best friend. Stanley pushed up his safety glasses. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me appear in the middle of the night. "Robert, the news about Nathan." "I'm sorry, I did not explain much." I placed the tablet and the data files on the workbench. 20 minutes later, Douglas Vance arrived. Douglas was an independent investigator for the insurance company, a man with an old grudge against Gregory Walsh. His gray suit was soaked with rain. Douglas's eyes hardened as he examined the evidence of Margaret's poisoning and the records of the staged accident. "Walsh and Vanessa planned this very carefully," Douglas said, his voice suppressing his anger. "But they made a mistake when they underestimated you." Just then, Lieutenant Cooper walked in. His police uniform was drenched with rain. Cooper was an old combat buddy of mine, a man who followed the rules completely. The 4 of us gathered around the workbench like mechanics dismantling a broken machine. Stanley took out a box of specialized equipment, 4 tiny recording microphones. "These are high-end directional recording microphones," Stanley said. "I'll install them inside the SUV's cabin. Vanessa and Walsh can inspect the vehicle, but they'll never find them." Stanley got to work. The sound of hammering and the clicking of bolts being tightened echoed through the night. The bolts were tightened. The circuits were connected. Every detail of my counterattack machine was complete. Douglas looked at me, concern in his eyes. "Robert, this plan is very dangerous. You'll have to face 2 murderers directly." I looked at my calloused hands. The pain of losing Margaret and the rage over Nathan surged through my veins. "I've lived long enough, Douglas," I replied, my voice so calm that even I was surprised. "I'll be the bait. Lead them into the trap." Stanley slapped me firmly on the shoulder. "The surveillance system and remote connection are ready. The moment they speak, all the data will be transmitted directly to Cooper's and Douglas's devices." I climbed into the SUV, turned the key. The engine roared smoothly. Everything was ready. Now it was time for me to play the role of an old man broken by grief. Perfect bait for 2 bloodthirsty killers. The next morning, cold sunlight broke through the Cleveland sky. I began my act. I called Dr. Gregory Walsh. My voice trembled. Short of breath. "Dr. Walsh, my chest feels tight. I can't breathe." On the other end of the line, Walsh fell silent for 1 second. A sinister undercurrent traveled through the phone. "Mr. Mitchell, stay right there. I'll bring the medicine directly to your house." He had taken the bait. I hung up, lay down on the old sofa in the living room, rested my head against the pillow. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The sound of hurried footsteps entered the room. I closed my eyes, held my breath, listening as the man who had murdered my wife came closer, only a few steps away. The footsteps stopped right beside the sofa. The scent of Gregory Walsh's expensive aftershave filled my nose. Overpowering. Cold. I kept my eyes closed. I deliberately kept my breathing shallow and broken. His hand touched my wrist. His fingers were ice cold. He was checking my pulse. A faint sneer escaped him. He pulled out his phone. The clicking of buttons echoed through the quiet room. He raised the phone to his ear. He spoke. His voice was a whisper, but every word fell like poison. "Vanessa, I'm at the old man's house." He paused for a moment. His free hand lightly tapped the arm of the sofa. "His pulse is very weak. This senile old man is about to collapse. He's not a threat. He doesn't even know what he's drinking." I lay still. A violent wave churned inside my chest. My entire body tightened like a steel cable stretched to its limit. The man who had poisoned Margaret. The man who had staged my son's accident. Now he was standing right over me, discussing my death like an administrative procedure. Vanessa's voice came through his phone speaker. Ice cold. "Get rid of the old man soon. I don't want him alive when the insurance money comes in. Make it look like a natural heart attack. Just like the mother 4 years ago." Walsh chuckled softly, calmly. "Don't worry. I brought an enhanced dose. It'll stop his heart within 12 hours. It won't leave any trace in his blood." He hung up. The zipper of his medical bag opened. He pulled out a small syringe. The plastic cap popped off with a sharp snap. The wet concrete inside my chest felt ready to explode. But I still forced my body to remain motionless. I needed him to prepare to act so the entire thing would be recorded as evidence. Stanley's 4 hidden microphones in the living room and on my clothes were capturing every frequency of sound. Every word they spoke was being transmitted directly to Lieutenant Cooper's and Douglas Vance's devices. Walsh moved closer. He lifted my arm. I opened my eyes. Suddenly, razor sharp. Walsh flinched. He stepped back. The syringe in his hand wavered. His expression shifted from confidence to shock. He stared into my eyes. There was none of the weakness of a sick old man, only the coldness of steel. I sat up, slowly, calmly. "Dr. Walsh, you got here fast?" He forced a smile. It twisted across his face, distorted by surprise. He quickly hid the syringe behind his back. "Mr. Mitchell, you're awake. I saw that you'd passed out, so I was going to give you an injection to support your heart." "Support my heart," I said, my calloused hand reaching out. I pointed directly at his medical bag. "Or the same dose you used on Margaret 4 years ago." Walsh's face changed instantly. All the color drained from it. He slowly backed toward the door. His eyes darted around constantly. What nonsense are you talking about? You're crazy. He turned around. He bolted out of my house like a madman. I did not chase him. I stood up, brushed the dust from my clothes. The bait had triggered the beast's instincts. They were panicking, and a panicked person would always lead himself to his own death sentence. I picked up my phone. A message came in from Lieutenant Cooper. Everything recorded. Everything according to plan. I went back into the kitchen. I took out a container of activated charcoal I had prepared beforehand. I mixed it into a glass of water and drank it all, ready for the final act. That night, my house sank into silence. The doorbell rang again. This time, Walsh was not alone. I opened the door. Vanessa stood there. She was wearing an elegant black outfit. In her hand was a gift basket. Inside were a bottle of wine and a box of Earl Grey tea. She smiled, her brightest smile and her most poisonous. "Dad, I heard Walsh say you weren't feeling well. I came to see you." I looked deep into her eyes. The final night had begun. I looked at Vanessa. Her bright smile could not hide the tension in her eyes. Gregory Walsh was with her. He stood behind her, his hand buried deep inside his coat pocket. I stepped back, opened the door wider. "Come in. It's late." Vanessa walked into the living room. The scent of expensive perfume filled the air. She placed the gift basket on the table. "Dad, you look exhausted. Let me make you a warm cup of Earl Grey tea." She went into the kitchen. The water began to boil. A spoon clinked against the side of a porcelain cup. I sat down on the sofa. Gregory Walsh leaned against the wall. His eyes followed my every movement. He did not know that the activated charcoal I had taken that afternoon was ready to neutralize the poison. Vanessa came back out. She was carrying 2 cups of tea. She placed the steaming cup in front of me. "Drink it, Dad. This tea helps calm you down and sleep well." I watched the thin steam rising from the cup. The strong aroma of Earl Grey filled the air. But hidden beneath it was the faint bitterness of poison, the scent that had taken Margaret's life 4 years ago. I picked up the cup, raised it to my lips. Vanessa and Walsh held their breath. Their eyes could not hide their savage excitement. I took a large sip, set the cup back on the table. 1 minute passed. I began pretending to raise a hand to my head. My voice became broken. My head. Why is everything spinning? I collapsed onto the table. The porcelain cup was knocked onto the floor. It shattered. Tea spilled everywhere. I lay still, my eyes half closed. Every one of my senses intensely focused. Vanessa let out a soft sigh of relief. The pretense completely disappeared. In its place was a razor-sharp voice filled with contempt. "It's done. The senile old man is down." Walsh came closer. He lightly nudged my leg with the tip of his shoe. "This dose combined with alcohol will stop his heart within a few hours. The police will conclude that he suffered a stroke from overwhelming grief after Nathan's death." Vanessa laughed loudly. An eerie laugh echoed through the living room. $4,800,000 in insurance money. The mansion. Everything belongs to us. This old man should have disappeared a long time ago, just like his wife 4 years ago. Walsh spoke, his voice filled with smug satisfaction. "I have to admit, your plan was perfect. From putting poison in Margaret's tea to staging Nathan's accident. No one suspected us even for a moment." "Because they're too stupid," Vanessa replied coldly. "They're nothing but wage earners. We were born to enjoy the rewards. They stripped away their masks, tore apart every disguise with their own hands. Every word of that brutal confession was captured completely by the hidden microphone system." Suddenly, police sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed through the gaps in the windows. Vanessa froze. Her face changed. "What's going on?" The front door was kicked open. Lieutenant Cooper and the police officers rushed in, their guns aimed directly at the 2 murderers. "Don't move." "Hands up," Walsh flinched. He tried to reach for the gun in his coat pocket, but 2 officers slammed him to the floor. The metallic click of handcuffs rang out. I slowly sat up, brushed the dust from my clothes. Vanessa stared at me with wide eyes. All the color drained from her face. Her red painted lips trembled. You're fine." How is that possible? I looked directly into her eyes, my gaze as cold as frozen steel. I'm a mechanic, Vanessa. I know how to detect and dismantle every broken part. Lieutenant Cooper held up the recording device. His voice was firm. Your entire confession about poisoning Margaret and staging Nathan's accident has been recorded. Back away, Miss Price. In a moment of absolute panic, Vanessa shoved an officer to the ground. She bolted through the back door. She jumped into the gray SUV, the old vehicle she had thrown at me like a piece of junk. Vanessa inserted the key. The engine roared. She floored the accelerator to escape into the rainy night, but she did not know that this machine no longer belonged to her. The GPS screen suddenly lit up bright red. A line of text appeared. It's old. Just like you. The vehicle's doors automatically locked. The steering wheel and accelerator were completely disabled. From a distance, through the satellite control system, Nathan activated emergency self-driving mode. The SUV automatically turned around, carrying the murderer screaming desperately inside the cabin, heading straight toward the city police station. I stepped out onto the porch. The rain had begun to stop. Douglas Vance walked over beside me. He handed me a phone. The screen showed the location of the call. An old auto repair shop on the edge of the city, I answered. A familiar voice came through the speaker. Dad, it's all over, I smiled. The first tear, after so many days of suppressed grief, rolled down my weathered cheek. The first light of a November dawn tore through the thick fog over the city of Cleveland. The cold was still there, but it no longer felt like it was freezing me to the bone. The rain that had lasted for so many days had finally stopped completely. I drove the black Ford Explorer straight toward the outskirts of the city. The familiar smell of grease and motor oil inside the vehicle brought me a strange sense of peace. I stopped the vehicle in front of the old Kowalczyk auto repair shop. The iron sign had rusted with time. I stepped out of the vehicle. My old legs moved slowly but steadily. Inside the shop, the morning sunlight streamed through the cloudy windows, illuminating the metal dust floating in the air. A figure was bent over the workbench, a broad back, messy hair, hands covered in black grease. Nathan looked up. My son and I looked at each other. Neither of us spoke immediately. Grief, endurance, and overwhelming happiness came in the silence of the workshop. Nathan walked toward me. I wrapped my arms tightly around my son. Hot tears rolled down my weathered cheeks. My own flesh and blood was still alive. The family machine had been badly damaged, but its most important gear was still intact. Nathan choked up. I'm sorry, Dad. I made you go through the worst days of your life. I gently patted his back. The rough hand of a mechanic gave strength to his son. You did the right thing, Nathan. The wicked have paid the price. Your mother can finally rest in peace up above. My son and I sat down together at the workbench. We picked up wrenches and screwdrivers. Together, we took apart and tightened every bolt of an old transmission. The rhythmic clinking of metal echoed through the shop. It was the sound of rebirth. Every crime committed by Vanessa Price and Gregory Walsh had been brought to light. Life imprisonment was the punishment they deserved for those who had no regard for human life or family bonds. Life is like a complex machine. It operates on honesty and compassion. Those who deliberately damage the gears of morality for their own gain will sooner or later be crushed by that very machine. Always pay attention to the smallest details in life. Sometimes the people who love you most cannot put it into words. They simply leave behind a trail and trust that you will follow it. Thank you for staying with Dad's Real-Life Revenge. Subscribe to the channel for more moving family stories where the truth may arrive late, but the consequences always find the right person.